All right, hey everybody, and welcome to another video by Code Webster here. Special hello to all my loyal Code Websters out there, and by loyal Code Websters, I mean my one and only subscribers. So today what we're going to basically be doing is we're going to create essentially the resources for the books. We're going to create the CRUD system. So that means we can delete a book, we can edit a book, we can create a book, we can edit CRUD, most crap it is. And read a book, obviously. Okay, so last time if you click localhost 3000 now, after you obviously do Rails S in your directory, you should see this, right? And this is just the books directory, right? So we go /books, and that just sets you to the books directory as well. The reason / as well does that is obviously because in our routes folder last week, which is under config, right? So if you go to your routes folder, your config folder, you head into routes. I was already there. Well, anyway, I was just showing you where that is. You'll see resources books, and that just means all the routes for books are there. And if you want to go to books, you go /books. I can go /books1. Obviously, that should give me an error. It says I couldn't find the book with the ID 1. I'll explain why that does that through the API. We have the read cycles and we have the users. So as well, you can go users, sign in, right? We showed that last time. All right, so obviously I'm not signed in right now. So what we're going to first go to is our books controller API. So that's under app, controllers, and the books controllers. The controller is essentially the circuitry to our website. All right, so the circuitry and all the mechanisms you alter, right? So this is the fluctuating part of it, is all in here. This changes the views. So if you go down to views and this books, and then I go to index, right? Because this is the index page. And the index page is normally the /books, right, or /users/books, which is how architecture will work eventually. But essentially, if I wanted to change something, I'd go hey, and that would change the view here. Now, the whole reason for the API and the books controller, right? So if you should have it up here, the whole reason of that is to control the logic of it. So at books equals books.all is shown here, right? So at book.each, which is Ruby code, do book. So it's going to loop through all the books. And that's pretty good. That's what we really want. Now, if you refresh that page, that hey should disappear. Right. But last week we discussed how we wanted to change the architecture. We wanted it to be as such where users is at the top and then books follow and read cycles follow. So we kind of have user, and a user has books, and those books have a read cycles, all right? As a read cycle, I should say. Now, to do that, right, to do that in Rails, what we first have to do is basically put books under the route of user. So we say resource user do, that means do it, resources books. Read cycles. So essentially what happens there is if we get rid of this, what we basically did is said everything under books has to be under user routes. All right, so what does that actually mean? Now, if you try to refresh the page, you'll see what that means. That means, hey, that doesn't exist. Luckily, Rails has this nice setup where you can actually see what paths there are. So now if I go look for books, right? Hey, where are the books? I can find that the books is under a route name of user book path. And it's a get request. And it's under user /books. So if I go user /books, it routes us to the page. The reason it's giving us the error is because on our index page, what we have is basically these auto-generated path. And as I showed you before, right? So if I open up a little new tab here, as I showed you before, the books paths are different, right? So they thought it was new book path. Right now, it's going to be new user book path. Rails just gives us an error there. So what we're going to do first of all is just going to change that right up. So you're just going to go there. This will be user book path. And if you guys are having trouble keeping up, remember that my GitHub is posted below, so you can just look at that. So it's going to be user book path. And obviously for user book path, we want to say, hey, where's the book? Because we're looping through each book. So what do these routes mean? So this means this is the show route. So that's going to show each one of them. So you're going to have like this will correspond to like /ID of the book. Okay, the edit route is another route which lets you edit and update your books. Destroy route, if you can guess this, you're a genius. Yes, it destroys the book. New book, yeah, self-evident. creates a new book. All right, so head over to the books controller. And the reason I'm taking my time explaining all this is because Rails does a lot of stuff in the backend without people understanding why it does it, why the hell it does. Now, if we refresh that, it should give us there. Now, if we go new book, we should get an error and all that. And that's because our whole system is not set up properly. Rails set up a very basic scaffold, but what we're doing is an interesting architecture. Now, before we go on, what we want to do here is we want to type before action. Now, before action basically essentially stops people from entering. Well, before action itself just does a function, right? So it does a function before all of this, right? So before you get this page or any of these pages or do any logic, I want you to set the book. And that function first, where we have set book, is defined as here. And it says, hey, this book that you're talking about in the code is book.findParams ID. Now, if you're wondering why they do that, because it's explained, like, say if you're editing a book, what book are you editing? Instead of actually writing it constantly, we use the dry principle, so don't repeat yourself. We just put it in. We just have a set book for show, edit, update, and destroy. Now, we want to also do that, but we want to do a devise inbuilt function called Authenticate User. So what that basically does is if you're not authenticated, you're not allowed to get into here, right? So it's going to say, hey, undefined method authenticate user. Oops, exclamation mark at the end. And that just means you actually do something with the user. So essentially what it does, hey, you need to sign up before continuing, right? So if I do that, and I do that again, it will let me through. It should let me through. But yeah, don't know why that's giving an error. Yeah, so it should let me through now. But now if I put that there, obviously, yes. I got to show you guys that again. Okay, so that's all good and dandy. But let's speed up a bit. All right, so now what we're going to do is where we see book, right? We don't want the index page, for instance. Let's work with that first of all. Our index page, we want only the books associated with this current user. So if you go current user.books.all, that gets the current user's books, right? Instead of getting all the books. Now, obviously, you got to sign up. So I'm just going to do that. Make my account code Webster. Right, signs up. All right, you've signed up correctly. Right, yeah, signed in. You're already signed in. That's another thing. If you try to sign in, it's already signed. It pushes you to the books. Right, refresh that to get the notification at the top. Remove the notification at the top, and now you've got this page. But this is empty, right? We want to create books. We want to do a lot of things. All right, so first of all, once we do current user.booksall, that's all good. And now we want to actually create a new book. So what we're going to do straight up is we're going to go to new book. All right, and this should give you an error. Why does this give you an error? Rails often did a stupid auto-generated system, right? So what is new book, right? So obviously, as I explained before, slash new or slash show slash one or just slash gives you different logic depending on what you enter in here. So if we go to define new here, and then we go to new.html.erb because it corresponds to that, you'll see this. So first of all, we want to change this to user books.path, user books/path underscore path. And that's because, obviously, I explained it before, it's the subrouting. Now, we also have this block of code, right? So what this function here does, or what this object does, is it essentially stores the code here, and it simply gets it from there and puts it in here. It's just to store code to make it look nicer. So what we're going to basically do is we're going to go to here, and we're also going to change it. We're getting an error. And the reason we're getting that error is because our Rails assumes that the only thing this is creating is a book, and we don't need to know anything else. What we actually do need to know is that we need to know it's a current user, right? And then we want to build that book, right? And what does that build command mean? Basically, Rails says, hey, if you want to, this is my understanding of it at least, is that as soon as you get a current user, you also want to get, what do you want to do with that current user? So on that current user's .book, so we want to get all those books. We want to build to create a new user, all right? And that depends on your association type. And this association type, as we explained before, under models, if you go to book, if you go to user, has many books, right? So you gotta make sure to go .build when you have has many association. All right, so now that that's done, let's go back to our new. Okay, let's go to form, And that should be all good. Now, if we refresh that page, we should get no errors. Awesome. All right, so now let's just write a page. Let's say we have a 1,000 pages book, right? And it's built by CodeWeb's, well, its name is CodeWeb da best. The best. And the author will say it's Code Webster's. Shout out to all my loyal subscribing Code Websters out there. All right, so you create that book. I don't know if we'll get an error. Boom, we got an error. That's a common coding problem, errors. All right, so what we're going to actually do is actually create a function to do something with the form. So forms essentially send the requests, and then the actual functions do stuff, right? And then route us and do other stuff. You'll understand when I actually write the code down, when you write the code down. So when we submit in new, we're actually calling this function called create. And basically what we need to do now is we need to create a new book and then save it. And then once it's saved, we need to send it straight, send the page back to the index page. So I've written a bit of code before. And don't worry, it's not a lot of code. I'm not going to give a page of code. But yeah. So this code just basically, I'll just bring it up. So essentially this code just says, hey, we've got a book. Let me color code it. I'm going to copy that code and simply put it where create was. All right, so we've got a book. So we got at book equals current user of the book. We got if at book.save. So if it saves. So Rail automatically says if it's saved, it saves it, and then it returns plus or a minus, right? So it returns true or false. All right. So what we have here is once it says, yeah, it did save, you're going to get all the current books and you're going to re-render that index page, right? Otherwise, you're just going to render the new page. That needs another end statement. Right, so we're going to close that if loop. Another thing you should notice here is that we're actually doing at book twice, because up here we have a before action set book. Oops, no. If you have it there, sometimes you have it. If you have it there, get rid of it. Otherwise, it's all good. Now, if we refresh this page, boom, right? So we got the code webda is the best was created by Code Websters. All right, so there seems to be some grammatical error. English is not my strong suit. But basically, if you look down at this code, right? Sorry for that. I didn't know nobody saw that. But you've got the book, create it. Does it save? Yes, it saved. Get all the books, render the index page. But we also have a notice, right? So we want to say at book name was created by book author. All right. Another thing we want to do as well is that if you saw this page, we've got two notices, and that's basically because we might have two notices in our code. We made a notice in our top view level and our low view level. So if you go here and go to index.html and go back up, you'll see a notice. We don't need that. So we get rid of that, and this should only show the green one, which is the right one. But yeah, so now you've got the ability to create a new book. So let's just create a random book. Go 38, the baby, right? So that's going to create a book. And it says the bab was created by the baby. All right, so that's pretty cool. And now you have two books, and you can make 100 different books, and it's all just going to render them one after the other. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But now let's go to our show page, right? So if we click show, as you can see, it goes to /2. Obviously, that gives me an error. Why does that give me an error? Let's go to show.html and understand what's happening there. Well, it's saying that, hey, edit book path doesn't exist, and it shouldn't exist. You basically just have to put user there, and you also have to put user _ books path. And that's just back as the index page. And if you're wondering where I'm getting all these names from, you just go rake routes on your terminal, or you just intentionally do an error and then just type in keywords here, and it should show you the different route names associated with ID or show or whatever. Okay, but yeah, so we've got the pages 100, Code Webster is the best, a review the best, author Code Webster, right? So also here we've got show here. We've got show for the baby. All right, so everything's going real good. Now what we want to do is we want to just be able to destroy a book. So all you're going to do there is you're going to go to your index page, all right? So here we have our link to destroy, and that's how a destroy works. There's not an actual page for that. It's just a delete request. So you're going to press destroy, and it should suddenly show me a confirm, are you sure? Should already do that, and I can cancel that. And then that will actually delete it. And this is permanent delete, so if it deletes, it's gone. You can't retrieve it again. So if you have any interesting data you saved, probably don't use this. But hey, if whatever catches your drift, if you know what I mean. But yeah, so all we got to do there is just do @book.destroy. And remember, this @book is being set here, which is called before certain functions. So you go @book.destroy, and we don't want to respond to this. This is just an interesting way that's done by Ruby automatically. What we actually want to do is just simply go, just copy these 2 lines, and that'll do what we need. We also want to change this a bit, right? So we don't want to say it's created. We want to say it was deleted by, maybe we'll call it current user dot, I don't know, email. Maybe that'll work. We'll see if that works. If it doesn't work, it might give us an error. So anyway, so that should just be like that. So it's got @book.destroy, destroys the actual book. Then you want to get all the books for this user, and you want to redirect to the user's book path, which is the index path. All right, now if we try that here, so let's just do that for safety measures. I'm not going to destroy this book. I love this book. I'm going to destroy this book. It says, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Boom. So it says dabab was deleted by codewebda@gmail.com. Booyah. All right, so it's all good. Now, everything's working. So our show's working. Our new book's working. But what we finally want to do is we want to be able to also edit our book. Our destroy is working as well. Obviously, if you press edit, it should give you an error. And this is a common theme. And that's obviously caused by, let's check our edit page. Edit.html.erb. That's basically caused by this, right? So we don't want it actually just to go @book. We want it to go user.book.path. Remember, don't mistake the index path with the show path, because the index path has user_books_path. This is user_book_path. And then you have to put the book in brackets. And this one is user_books path, right? So you can see the difference there. Now, if we refresh that, boom, you can actually edit the page. Now, the problem here is that Rails assumed that, once again, Rails keeps assuming stuff. We need to deal with Rails after this video. Rails basically assumes that these forms are the same for creating and editing. We are not going to have that. We're going to have a special type of form. So what you're going to do is you're going to go over to your form, please. Control-C that. Go back to your editing book. Yeah, Control-C is a really good command. I'm totally a hacker. So all you want to do then is you want to change that for width to a 4. You can do a width, but I'm going to do a 4. It's much better. Trying to explain this, basically it's just a different way of writing your forms. This is much more effective format for updating, but just write that down. If you want to learn more, you can go check the Rail guides. You go current user @book. Right? And @book is from the actual update controller. Local true, you don't need that. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of that. All right, so this is the actual front end for the form, right? You could call it the front end for the form, or the middle front end, right? The form sends the requests. You also want to change the actual logic behind it. But before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go back here, refresh the page. All right, so we got an error. Obviously undefined. Yeah, so if you didn't do that, you get a bonus points. If you want your bonus points, send me a DM. Okay. All right, that's another thing. We had book instead of @book, and that's because our form.html.erb was assuming that we're in views. So what you basically want to do is assuming we're in index. So what you basically want to do is just go Control-F, then go book, and that'll find all the books. Click under here, change that to @book, right? And make sure you're not deleting all of them. So the first one, yes. Did that work? Oh, you see it started at the bottom, typical. All right. Okay, so you change that one. Nope, don't bother changing that one. Change that one. Okay, don't change that one, change that one. That one, and change that one, that doesn't matter. just want to change that one. And then it's going to go down there. So you don't need to change these two because those are paths. You just need to change wherever you found book to at book. And that's a fast way of doing it. Well, relatively fast. Now, if you refresh that, the error should be gone. Now, cool thing about editing is it automatically puts whatever you had in your index page for that specific entry into your edit form, right? So you've got 100, code web is best, the best, code websters. All right, so if I press update book, it should give me an error. Nothing should change. But what I want to actually show you guys is the params. Rails console actually shows the requests made. So if I go update book, it's going to say unknown format, right? So that's just Rails error because it auto-generated that. But if you look up, you should see the parameters. So you've got blah, 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 authenticity token. If you go to book, pages, 1,000, code web is the best, review the best, code websters, commit update ID 1, right? If you go down here, you can also see that. What we're going to be using is we're going to use the format to find the actual book, and we're going to use the ID for the current user, all right? So as you can see, it goes 1.2. It's an interesting way, but I like to do it like this. Our actual book has an ID of 2, and we stored that as the format. So if you go to our book controller and go obviously down to update, because that's what the form calls, we have to just change that a bit. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually update that. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this respond to format. Get rid of that. Just delete all that. I just basically do at book equals book.find params format. And what that basically does is it essentially gets the format, which is 2, and it finds that book. So it's a cool, nifty way. And to access the actual params, you just have to go params. It's like a array or hash table, I think, or one of the two. I don't know. But basically, it's just I'm pretty sure it's a hash, but you just basically do that to find the actual book. Once you do that, you want to also do what we've done before, similar to our create. We want to check if it actually worked. So we can go if at book.update. Book params. So it's saying, hey, if it updated, do this. Else do this, right? And book params here is basically it's a security mechanism which only allows pages, name, review, and author to be submitted, because we don't want someone to submit a bunch of new stuff. It's really good for security. So if you have actually launching this, it's a lot easier. And this is why I love Ruby on Rails compared to other systems where you have to actually manually set it up. So next, what you want to do is if it updated, you just want to just copy this again. And we just want to say was edited by current user. Right. So that will basically allow us to edit the book, and it will go if at book updated. Else we just want to run a render edit. And what this basically does is it goes back to the edit page. And it's a really nice system. And the more you work with Rails, the more you find out how intelligent the people making Ruby and Rails were. It's not unnecessary code. It's rather to help you in the future when you're actually writing functions. So without further ado, let's see how if our update works. All right, so let's just change code websters to code websters plus cool guys. Update book. Did we get an error? So what this could happen is that this might have got stuck. So if you press an enter, it should just push through. Yeah, so Rails kind of gets stuck sometimes, and that just happens generally. For this specific reason, I don't want to read through the code, but it's probably because I had an error before. But yeah, so you got code webster is the best, was edited by codewebster@gmail.com. So yeah, you've got everything working there. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next week.